Hey guys, it's Debbie. Welcome back to my channel. Today's video is pretty highly requested. I'm going to be sharing my extracurriculars, stats, and kind of like college application as someone who got into Stanford. Gotta rep that merch right now. Before I start, there's some stuff that I want to say. First of all, this video is not meant for comparison or to make anybody feel bad. The college process is so random, so like copying my stats won't guarantee that you'll get in. When I was at Stanford, like for admit weekend, I also met so many qualified people who were rejected from certain schools, who were like rejected from Stanford, rejected from Harvard, rejected from their dream school. So I think it's just really important to keep that in mind and kind of like watch this video with like a kind of certain perspective. Also, I'm like not a professional, obviously. I don't have all the secrets to admissions, and I haven't seen my file yet. I'm planning to, but I can't see it yet. So I don't know whether I got in because of an extracurricular or in spite of something. So for example, like I don't know whether an extracurricular I did like helped me get in, or maybe it would have hurt me, but I was lucky enough to get in regardless. So again, like don't try to like copy everything I do, or like feel bad if you don't have a certain extracurricular and other people might, because you don't know what really like checks the boxes or like kind of tips you over the edge into admission. So now that we've said that, let's get on with the video. I have a kind of like notes thing with a bunch of content on it, so I'm just gonna kind of go through the kind of like the little bullets and share all my information. First up is demographics. So basically, when we talk demographics, colleges will kind of look for certain demographics, certain identities that people have, like based on where they live, like geographically, their social status, their economic status, their race, stuff like that. They don't admit you based on that, but it does play a big role in crafting your application. And colleges want diversity, so they tend to try to get a like wide variety of these like demographics. So I am an Asian female from right outside Austin, Texas. So it's a pretty like suburban area. I go to a typical public high school, so it wasn't a feeder school, it wasn't a private school. I'm not first gen or low income. I would say we're kind of like upper middle class, and I'm not an underrepresented minority, obviously. That being said, basically I'm not a hooked applicant. I don't have anything special in my demographics that would like add to my application. At Stanford, my intended major, I believe you could put 3, I think. And I believe I put bioengineering, anthropology, and symbolic systems, which are still things that I'm considering studying. For this part, I would say my biggest tip is to make sure that your intended major fits your application, because a lot of kids will try to like cheat the system and they'll like apply as like an East Asian Studies major with the intention to switch into comp-sci once they get in, because technically like people think it's easier to get into East Asian Studies than comp-sci, which yeah, it kind of is, because comp-sci is just so competitive. But I think it's also important to know that admission officers know when you're doing that. Like it's really obvious if your entire application has computer science extracurriculars and suddenly you want to be an East Asian Studies major. Like they can tell that you're trying to cheat the system, and they won't admit you if that's the case. So it's really, the most important thing is not worrying about whether your major is competitive or not, but to make sure that your extracurriculars, your essay, and your kind of entire application as a whole fits the major that you're trying to study. So next up are my academic stats, which is probably what everyone wants to know. My GPA unweighted was a 4.0 out of 4.0. My weighted GPA, which is weighted with AP classes and stuff, and it's out of it's like a 5.0 GPA scale, and mine was a 5.925. at the time of my application. So that was beginning of senior year. The highest it could possibly be is a 6, so pretty close to perfect. I took 12 AP classes. I took 1 of them sophomore year, 5 of them junior year, and 6 of them senior year. So there was no break for me senior year. And which that also means that when I submitted my application to Stanford, I only submitted 6 of my AP scores, because the other 6 I just took like a couple weeks ago. I scored a 4 on 2 of them and a 5 on 4 of them, which meant that I was an AP scholar with distinction. And then for my standardized testing, for my SAT, I scored a 1570 on my first try. I took it at school, and once I scored that, I was considering retaking it, but I decided not to. I didn't want to study again and like probably not score that much higher anyways. I did not take the ACT. In Texas, most people just take the SAT, not the ACT. And then I did not take any SAT subject tests or anything else along those lines. I ended up submitting all of my test scores. And I read somewhere that what you should do, because I know a lot of schools are still doing test optional. I think Stanford might still be doing test optional next year. So if your scores are within like the median range, it won't hurt to submit them. If they're below the median range, maybe you would withhold them. But it's like definitely a case-by-case basis. So next up is extracurriculars and awards, which I think is kind of like one of the more important parts of your application. Because it's test optional, colleges are placing less importance on your SAT scores, your ACT scores, and they're placing more importance on what you do in your free time and what you're involved in outside of just your grades and your schoolwork and stuff. It's pretty like commonly like encouraged for kids to have a spike nowadays. So basically just having one extracurricular or one thing that you're really, really good at, whether you're like a national debate champion or have like a multi-million-dollar business or do like have published research in a certain field. That's what it means to be spiky, and that's what's like conventionally advised. I, on the other hand, was not spiky. I had no spikes. I was pretty well-rounded. I was really involved in a lot of things in high school, and I wasn't like particularly good at one specific thing. So that being said, I used up all 10 of my Common App sections to write in my extracurriculars. My main ones were, let me think, cross country. I was heavily involved in my school's cross country team, and I ran club track as well, which I wasn't that good at. Like, I'm not that good at running, but I put in a lot of time, a lot of effort into my sport, and so that was one of my highest like ranked extracurriculars. I included my online businesses and my YouTube channel, you know, but because again, that one I invested quite a bit of time into it. I've been quite consistent in it. Like, I've run an online business since I was like 12, and that's just something that's continued through high school, so it's very important to my growth as a person. I was involved in a local cultural nonprofit. I did hold a part-time job. I was in xoxo and DECA, and I competed for both clubs and made it advance to the state level in both clubs. I also did shadow at a local hospital, and I did include that as part of my kind of like pre-med aspect of my application. And then I think the rest of them were kind of just like random things that I were involved in. I can't remember off the top of my head, but I do know I described them pretty heavily and went in a lot of detail and what like my role in each extracurricular like consisted of. My awards were pretty ordinary. Like, I didn't win any national awards, did not win any national competitions. Again, I was pretty bad at my sport. There was no national sport ranking for me. I think the awards that I included were like AP Scholar and National Spanish Honor Society, and I think National Merit Commended, because I was not a semifinalist. And my number one tip in this section would probably be to make sure to be really descriptive in your extracurriculars and not to do things just for college. I did not do things just for college. I know people who did and who did get into good schools, and I know people who did and didn't get into good schools. I really didn't do anything for college, like purely for college, which kind of explains why my well-roundedness. I just dabbled in everything that I was interested in, and it turned out all right. As long as you can write out what you were involved in, what you did, how you spent your time, like that's important for the colleges to know. Last but not least is my essays, which is I think the other part of what's really important for the same reasons as I said prior, because of the test optional and less emphasis placed on test scores. I think my essays definitely helped me get in because I didn't have very strong extracurriculars, and when I spoke with my AO at Admit Weekend, she mentioned that the number one thing that she looked for was personality. And you can't find personality through test scores or even extracurriculars really. Like personality comes from your essays, your letter of recommendations, your interview, which I didn't get an interview by the way. So Stanford has 8 fairly short essays. They're like 50 words to 250 words. So they're not bad at all, along with the Common App, and which is like a kind of like a separate thing. The roommate essay is one that's pretty unique to Stanford, and it's one of the most important ones because it's supposed to be written very like truthfully. It's supposed to be very genuine, so the admissions officer can see who you are as a person and what you enjoyed. In my roommate essay, I wrote about working out, I wrote about my dog, I wrote about baking cookies and watching rom-coms, I remember. And it was very representative of who I was as a person, what I liked to do in my free time. So it kind of made my application seem more personal. I had my essays professionally edited by someone. I didn't hire like a private admissions counselor or anything, but once I'd written my essays, I had someone read them, edit them, let me know what I should fix, and then I fixed them and then I submitted. Speaking of that, like I recommend you have someone read your essays. Like it doesn't have to be a paid person. You can ask an English teacher, a friend, an adult, but it's really easy to feel like you are saying something and then it not turn out on paper. So it's important that other people who don't know what you're thinking understands what the essays is trying to convey. It's also important that you don't get scammed because there are a lot of people out there who might not be qualified to give essay editing advice, who do give essay editing advice and who charge absurd amount of money. If you're gonna pay someone, make sure you know their credentials and make sure you know their track record and why they're qualified to be charging for essay editing. Yeah, that's basically it. I hope this video, like at least one part of this video, was helpful to somebody. And if you guys have any questions or something, I'd love to help because I know the process was really stressful for me as someone whose parents didn't go through this process. I had to do all the research by myself and kind of teach myself along the way. So definitely feel free to leave a comment down below or DM me on Instagram or something and I'll see what I can do. So yeah, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you guys next time. Bye!